This is something that probably only 1 in 1,000 Masons in America understand, is that the royal secret is that you can live forever by sexually vampirizing children.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have just lost cabin pressure. We're back for part 2 of Real 33rd Degree Mason reacts to a former 33rd Degree Mason. My name is Brent. This is Stone, Iron, and Oak. As promised, we are going to be going into the second half of this interview from the Almost False podcast with Mr. Bill Schnoebelen. I think the first half has garnered some great reactions, some great insight, and a few unhinged people in the comments section. Hey, comments section, as they say over on Grand Thumb, out of control. Comment down below. I'm not going to spoil everything, so go ahead, sit back, put on your seatbelt, and watch part 2.
Okay, so to make sure that everyone understands, kind of what you already set up, I'll try to summarize it. So there's the Blue Lodge, which everyone has to go through, which is 3 degrees, and then you have 2 choices, either the York Rite, which is 7, or the Scottish Rite, which is 29. So 3 plus 29 equals 32. So 32 degrees and honorary 33rd degree for people that are deemed to be important. So that's kind of how it worked. Only on the Scottish Rite, that's where the 33rd degree happens. So
before we get to what Bill says, yes, this host is pretty accurate. I will say that it's not an either or. Once you become a Master Mason, as to which rite you belong to, you can join both. His number of degrees are a little off on the York Rite side, but essentially, he has the gist of it correct. It is this host is accurate there.
Hey, let me just correct something.
Yes, please.
If you're a 10th degree 9th Templar, you can become a 33rd degree Mason even if you never went through the Scottish Rite.
Okay.
Minor detail.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
No. Again, just wow. This guy has no idea what he's talking about, but he claims he did all of this. Once again, for the record, a Knight Templar is not a 10th degree Mason. They don't use numbering systems in the York Rite. He is simply a man who has taken the Order of the Temple within a York Rite commandery. In essence, that just means that he has become a Master Mason. He petitioned the York Rite bodies. He became a Royal Archmason, and then after that he became a member of the Cryptic Council, and then after that he took the degrees of the commandery, or the orders of the commandery. He was simply voted in. It's not like he spent some grand amount of time at each thing. He could have done all 3 of these things in basically 3 consecutive weekends. That's how long it takes in most jurisdictions. Second, and far more important, is that this guy just said that the Knights Templars can become a 33rd degree even if they haven't gone through the Scottish Rite. That is simply not true. That statement is the leopard bell of an oncoming liar. The only way you can be honored with a 33rd degree is by being a Scottish Rite Mason. And then there are steps and minimum terms of service in order to become a 33rd. And it is definitely not guaranteed. In the southern jurisdiction, which this guy, being in Iowa, would have most likely been, since that is a southern jurisdiction state, he would have needed to be a 32nd degree Master of the Royal Secret for a minimum of 4 years before being invested with the rank and decoration of a Knight Commander of the Court of Honor. It's an honor that you are bestowed after a minimum of 4 years by the Supreme Council in recognition of your service and other things within Masonry or the community. Then you need to be in that grade for a minimum of 4 years before you are eligible to be elected to the 33rd degree as an Inspector General Honorary. Now, it's rare that a man would go from 32nd to 33rd in 8 years. I've seen it happen, but it is pretty rare. It's not impossible. But more important thing is that when Bill says something like they offer it to you, it sounds like something that just offhand. You are nominated by the deputy or the Sovereign Grand Inspector General of your state. And that is the guy who's in charge of the Scottish Rite for that state or that territory abroad. Then the entire Supreme Council, which for ease of explanation is kind of like the board of directors for the Scottish Rite, vote on your nomination, and it must be unanimous. You are then notified that you have been elected and are offered the opportunity to accept. If Bill was a legitimate 33rd degree Mason, he would have explained all this. It's not difficult to explain. I just did it. But this guy just simply doesn't know his ass from his hole in the ground.
Now, we talked about the 33rd degree Mason. People usually are like, that's the highest level of Freemasonry that there is. There's also a bunch of people that talk about, there's secrets in Freemasonry that a lot of people don't know about, and you have to, be deemed worthy to be told these secrets. You became a 33rd degree.
Okay, just as a quick aside, there is no point in Masonry where you are deemed worthy of additional secrets or to be told about secret bodies that are not known to the greater fraternity. Conspiracy theorists love to say that there are, but all of these bodies are either A, widely known as appendant bodies, or B, irregular or clandestine bodies that look Masonic, but they aren't. A couple of the ones that are clandestine and are not Masonic, but appear Masonic, are orders like the Ordo Templi Orientis, the OTO. That is probably the most famous of the clandestine Masonic orders. And I shouldn't even call it Masonic orders. It is based around Masonic frameworks, but it is definitely 100% not Masonry. The other most common one is called the Rite of Memphis and Mizraim. Those are two of the probably over 1,000 clandestine Masonic bodies that are out there.
Degree Mason, and you eventually worthy to be told these secrets. You became a 33rd degree Mason, and you eventually joined this secret group or secret order or whatever you want to call it. Can you explain what that is?
Oh, this should be good. Yes, Bill, please explain how you, a man who is not a president, an actor, a musician, or some other important person, was made a 33rd degree Mason. I want receipts, names, dates, places, circumstances. Please clarify for all of us exactly how this took place.
Okay. Well, beyond what we've just been talking about, over in Europe, there's what's called the Rite of Memphis Mizraim, and that is 360 degrees beyond.
Okay, so let me recap what I literally just said a minute ago. The ancient and primitive Rite of Memphis and Mizraim, that is not Scottish Rite. That is a clandestine body that operates outside of legitimate Masonry. Notice that he said Europe. This is about to get wild. And also, it isn't 360 degrees. This guy listens to too much Alex Jones.
Is what's called the Rite of Memphis Mizraim, and that is 360 degrees beyond what's, I've already discussed. And most Masons don't even know about that.
They don't know about it because it isn't legitimate and recognized. Also, it isn't secret. Memphis Mizraim has a website. In fact, there are competing organizations that call themselves the Ancient Rite or Ancient Primitive Rite of Memphis and Mizraim. They have competing websites. They're out there. It's widely known. We talk about this to Masons who are just being initiated in Blue Lodges and say, when you start looking around online, maybe you already have, you're going to find some of these organizations like the OTO and Memphis, Mizraim. Those are the two big ones. That's why I always bring them up to new Masons, is that they are not Masonry. They are clandestine bodies, and they are just going to take your money, and we'll probably get deeper into this in a second. But I want to see where Bill's headed with this. And they don't know that it's, as I was saying, even Pike wrote about the Rite of Memphis Mizraim and called it trash back in the 19th century.
Now, I got up to the, if memory serves, 96 degree. And because how I did that is...
Okay, since we're getting into it, let's talk about the Rite of Memphis and Mizraim. It is a high degree system that was merged between two earlier Egyptian rites. The Rite of Mizraim, which is started up very early 19th century in France. And the Rite of Memphis, which was a few decades later. It's also started up in France. It was in Paris. Each claimed to preserve this ancient esoteric knowledge of Egypt and the Knight Templars, and they boasted anywhere between 90 and 97 degrees each. They were two different organizations, depending on the version. And it also doesn't surprise me that it was started in France, because that's also where the Scottish Rite was started. One of the most critical things to understand about Memphis Mizraim is that it does not require legitimate Masonic membership in order to join. Anyone can go to their website and send them a huge check, and then I assume that, boom, they'll send you some certificates or something. But it's not like they're going to run a check and make sure that you have a legitimate, recognized, mainstream Blue Lodge that you are a member of. So once you hear that you are, somebody say that they are deemed worthy, you'll be told about Memphis it's a lie, because you don't need to be a Mason to join it. The rituals are borrow very heavily from standard Scottish Rite and French Masonic sources, which again isn't surprising, because the Scottish Rite was founded in France. The reason it's called the Scottish Rite is because at the time, Scotland was this far off and exotic place, and that's why it was called the Scottish Rite, because even though it was founded in France. What was I saying? Memphis and Mizraim. So they added layers of occult and hermetic imagery, and many European Masonic authorities dismissed it as irregular because of the enormous number of degrees and lack of central control. So getting back to Albert Pike writing about it, he was well aware of these bodies and didn't consider them to be legitimate Masonry. There are letters in the archives that show Pike calling it irregular and unnecessary, and memory serves, a self-aggrandizing system that offered inflated titles and mystical ornamentation rather than genuine Masonic philosophy. He accused some of the prominent peddlers of that particular rite, especially guys that were Joseph Surnow, and later John Yarger, of creating what are called degree mills. These are organizations that sold degrees for prestige and profit. Memphis Mizraim also lacked a regular Masonic warrant. So even with Pike discouraging that particular rite, it did continue in regular circles. It still does today. And then later on in the later 19th century, mid to late 19th century, it came under the leadership of two guys. One was named Giuseppe Garibaldi, and another guy was called Gerard and Caus. He went by the esoteric name of Papus. In the 20th century, it became intertwined with theosophy and Martinism. You've probably heard of Martinism, and ceremonial magic, and other similar traditions. It appealed to those who were more interested in esotericism than in regular Masonry. Now, for this 360 degrees business, there aren't 360 degrees. That's almost kind of a joke, because when they each started, there were two separate rites, and they each had between 90 and 97 degrees when they merged. And they had so much overlap that I think that there are still 95 degrees in the organization, but that's it, not 360. I think it's 95. And you can look that up over on the websites for Memphis and Mizraim. They list out their degree names, all 90 or 95 or 97, 98, however many of them there are. This isn't a body where legitimate Masonry isn't a body where you can reach a certain level and things are revealed to you. Rite of Memphis and Mizraim, these clandestine or irregular ones, yeah, that's probably how they work. Those are bodies where some hack salesman takes a rube, like Bill, perhaps, if he even did this, and they quickly part a fool with his money. This is exactly why Albert Pike was railing against it, calling it a degree mill, because selling these degrees and titles in the 19th century was an actual business more than a philosophical system. There is a sucker born every minute, and Bill fell right into that honeypot.
There was a group in Chicago where they were involved with that thing, because Chicago was and probably still is a major nexus of Satanism.
If you're a Satanist in Chicago, comment down below.
Most people don't know that. So this group brought me into Memphis, Mizraim, and ultimately there was a fellow that flew over all the way from Paris who was the son of Papas. Now, you probably don't know that.
Oh, wait, let me back that up.
Who was the son of Papas. Now, you probably don't know that name, but Papas was a very prominent 19th century high-level occultist and ceremonial magician, and he wrote a book called The Tarot of the Bohemians, about tarot cards, And he came over and he brought me into the 97th degree.
Oh, how did I know that Papus was going to come into the conversation? Kind of like how Princess Leia claimed that she could smell Governor Tarkin's foul stench when she was brought on board the Death Star. I just knew this guy was going to enter the chat. Papus founded and ran the Martinist order of the late 19th century, and he was an influential force in esoteric movements in Europe. This leads into a deeper rabbit hole than is probably going to come into in this interview. If it comes up, I'll address it there or a later video. But I'm not going to send us really deep into the looking glass of the Martinist order or other things unless Bill brings it up. But Bill is right. He is right about something. And that is that most Masons or normal people don't know Papus. But being a scholar, I do. I also know that his son, Philippe Encausse, was also a medical doctor, and he wrote a biography on his father in the, I don't know, it was late 19th, early 20th century, or a little bit later, perhaps. But Philippe Encausse did continue leading the Martinist order after his father's death. Philippe died somewhere in the 80s, so there is an outside chance that Bill actually met him. But since he calls him the son of Papus, he doesn't call him Philippe or brother Encausse or anything. I'm betting he just probably read about him the same way I read about him.
And this is where you get into the really deep stuff, the ideas behind sexual alchemy, how to supposedly live forever, all this creepy.
That might be in Rite of Memphis and Mizraim, but it's not in any legitimate Masonic orders, appendant bodies, concordant bodies, Blue Lodge, etc. That might be in Rite of Memphis and Mizraim, but not in legitimate Masonic circles.
Stuff. Anyway, I would go up to these guys that had been in the Scottish Rite forever, older men that were in their 60s, and I'd say, okay.
Bill, the question was to talk about you getting your 33rd degree, and you talked about Memphis and Gerard and Encausse, and now you're talking to 32nd degree Masons. I'm still waiting for the story of how you became a 33rd degree Mason.
I'm now a sublime prince of the royal secret,
Wait, so he goes through and Rite of Memphis and then joins the Scottish Rite.
They did this initiation, and I was a sublime prince of the royal secret. I said, so what's the royal secret? And they go, I don't know.
The royal secret is equilibrium. It's not a secret. We literally have books about it. Pike noted that in Morals and Dogma, and the late Rex Hutchins reiterated it in his book, Bridge to Light. It's been out there in the public to be seen for over 200 years. But I'm betting that whatever Bill says next is going to be incredibly loony regarding what the royal secret is. I'm guessing it's going to be clickbaity, it's going to sell books, and it's going to sell speaking engagements.
Now, whether they were just feigning ignorance, because at this time I was like in my late 20s, or what, I don't know. But I learned eventually, after getting into the Rite of Memphis Mizraim.
Okay, notice how you just said that he's talking about things that he learned after getting into Memphis Mizraim. Not his 33rd degree, not his 32nd degree, but Memphis. So once again, we've subtly shifted away very quietly and quickly to another subject.
And again, this is something that probably only 1 in 1,000 Masons in America understands.
And I'm betting that only 1 in 1,000 Masons, because Bill is about to make something up out of whole cloth with no source or proof.
Is that the royal secret is that you can live forever by sexually vampirizing children.
What?
Literally.
What?
And that's what these people believe.
Wow. Just, wow. Citation needed, proof needed, script needed, books needed. Show me in Morals and Dogma, in Bridge to Light, Clausen's commentaries, anywhere in the hundreds of books written by Art de Hoyos, S. Brent Morris, Chris Hodap. I'll even take Manly P. Hall or Arthur Wade at this point. I have been in the 32nd degree as a cast member of the degree or as the director of the degree 45 times in my Scottish Rite career. And this assertion is so baseless, so beyond the pale and made of whole cloth, that I could no longer believe this man if he told me how much I weighed. Fraud. Fraud is a good adjective for this dude. He knows he's lying, and I would love to know what his alleged source is, because it certainly isn't any book that was ever written by a notable Mason, respected or otherwise. My bet is that if he actually cited a source, it's from a personal interview with someone who can't be verified because he made up the source. If he had a verifiable source, he would have named it right here. He would have said, this is where I saw it. But he doesn't say, I saw it in the degree, I learned it. But he doesn't have a source that can be verified. He makes this crazy statement, and I'm betting he's going to follow his MO and move on to a different topic very quickly. I'm going to guess that if he doesn't shift topics in the next 30 seconds, the host will. And we will never circle back to this absolute bombshell of a claim that he has just made. Let's see what happens, because that's my prediction, because I've watched this interview. I know his MO. I've seen plenty of people like this make these kinds of claims, and that's my bet. Let's see what happens.
Now, again, the vast majority of Masons have no understanding of any of this. They just think
that's because most Masons aren't certifiably insane or make things up that aren't real.
It's this good old boys club that teaches, morality. And this is the way with almost all of these groups, whether it's the Mormons or the Masons or the witches or the Vatican.
So the Mormons, the Masons, the witches, and the Catholics in the Vatican are all in league together under Satan. I'm waiting for this guy to tell me that the only way to salvation is through him, because he is the true messenger of God. That's where I feel like this is headed. It literally would not surprise me if he tells me that he is Metatron and that the true God is going to speak through him and tell me that I have to give him money in order to gain my salvation. It would not shock me at this point in the interview.
They all have this vast number of reasonably good people, in some cases very good people, under them that are sort of feeding them all of this energy. Because let me back up.
Yes.
When
you're backing up, please tell us how you became a 33rd degree Mason. We are still waiting for that answer.
Because let me back up. When I was into Satanism, we understood and were taught that Satan draws energy from being worshipped.
Not sure I deeply believe things that a Satanist cult would tell me. But Satan's powers, I think, we can pretty much agree are fairly ill-defined. In the Bible, it really only talks about Satan being a liar and a trickster who twists God's word to fool men. It doesn't say that he gains energy from belief or from ceremonies. In fact, if that were the case, it really doesn't track for me personally in my theological view, because if Satan gains energy from a satanic ritual or whatever, then by reverse of that, he would lose energy by people not doing these things or not following them, and eventually he would just lose all power and cease to exist. So we're getting into theology here, not masonry. So I'm just going to let Bill talk.
And when these guys, they don't, even if they don't understand it, every time a Mason kneels at the altar and swears an oath, the devil gets energy from that. And again, most Masons, if they heard this, they would be scandalized. They'd say, this guy's a nut. But the funny thing is...
No, I think you're a nut for everything else you've said, but please continue.
And like you say, you've talked with people who, to a greater degree or a lesser degree, and believe me, we've talked to dozens of people over the years in ministry who came to us who were, like sodomized as children, who were literally taken to the Masonic lodge after hours, laid on that very same altar that the Holy King James Bible laid on, and they were gang raped by a bunch of old men that were all high-level Masons until they were practically dead.
Yeah, that's pretty much the story that I heard without, details, because it was an eyewitness account. It was a secondhand witness, but it's similar to what I heard before. So, okay. A lot of said about Freemasonry, and you kind of said how, Freemasonry is worshiping Lucifer, and I think that's made very clear in the books that you talked about. If people want to check the references, they can check your book, or they can go directly to the references if they doubt anything, because it's in there. I want to go back.
Check the references. I don't believe anything this guy's saying. Why would I trust his references are also sound? He's probably referring back to various hoaxes and conversations with people that can't be corroborated. Kind of like this host who just said that he heard a similar story from a second-hand witness. Here's an important note. A second-hand witness doesn't exist because they aren't a witness. In court, that would be called hearsay. Another interesting phenomenon I've seen in YouTube and various comment threads is this recurring tale of this type of abuse in Masonic lodges at the hands of high-level Masons. And as I read through Twitter or YouTube or Reddit, it's like every person commenting says that their grandfather was a 33rd degree, and then suddenly they remembered that this thing happened when they were 3 years old and that they were left to die in a cornfield. But there's never any proof. There's never any police reports. There's no evidence. And the stories all have basically the same general themes. So once again, when we get a wild claim and then we quickly pivot somewhere else, that should be a red flag in the tale that's being woven.
To something that you said earlier, because we kind of did a tangent on Freemasonry, because I thought it was very important. But you talked about selling.
Yes, please, let's go back to the part where he talks about getting his 33rd degree.
Your soul. Let's get back to that, because I definitely don't want to ignore that. Can you explain the circumstances?
Okay, selling your soul.
Well, again, there was this group in Chicago, and they were entwined with this Memphis Mizraim Rite, and they were also with this. It was like two things together: the Brotherhood, which I mentioned earlier, and then this Memphis Mizraim thing. And I interacted with these people, and at a certain point, they said, "Well, if you want to go any further and become a satanic priest, you need to, sell your soul to the devil." And so they took me to this park in Glen Ellen, Illinois, which is like a sub.
We're going to pivot away from this interview because they spend the next 40 minutes talking about Mormons and the Latter-day Saints and some alleged satanic altar in the middle of a public park in this place in just outside of Chicago. Apparently the Church of Satan routinely meets there in broad daylight, but there isn't any more conversation about Masonry here. So by all means, feel free to watch the rest of the video over at Almost False. Disappointingly, this host isn't pressing him on any of the crazy things he's saying or asking him any probing questions. He just nods and moves along with the guest's stream of consciousness. I really would have preferred him to be a lot more engaging in keeping the guest on track and keeping some sort of train of thought. I also wish that I could say that this guy, Bill Schnoebelen, I don't think he's crazy, though. I think that's an important thing to bring up. I don't think he's crazy. I think he's purposely lying to enrich himself by ensnaring charismatic and evangelical and devout Christians with his tales about being a reformed Satanist so that he can sell books and speaking engagements while garnering respect from those people and those organizations. I will say that the man who wins respect and consideration by false pretenses is no better than a man who wins money by false pretenses, and by doing both of these, I'm going to call Bill a charlatan. I'll go out and say it. I have done more research over the past few days, and I find this man to be less and less credible with every bit of information that I find. So now I've presented my reactions, so let's hear your thoughtful and well-reasoned commentary down below, or you can just give me your totally unhinged hot takes. The comments section of a Masonic video is always off the rails. Once again, my name is Brent. This is Stone, Iron, and Oak. Like and subscribe so that you can be notified the next time a real 33rd degree Mason responds to a former 33rd degree Mason. Take care.